Wow, here we are again, Brother Peter, with tidbits from the Word. We are in Genesis chapter 8. We have covered 1 through 7. And now we are in Genesis chapter 8. We're going to go do a little browsing through that. We see that in the beginning of chapter 8 is the judgment was finished. The flood had taken place. Noah was on the ark. And Noah had landed. And this was the dispensation of conscience. Now, that was the dispensation of judgment there. So when God remembered Noah and every living thing and the cattle that was with him in the ark, and God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also from the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was retained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of 150 days, the waters were abated. Imagine the ark landing on that mountain, and 150 days before a mountain peak. Let's see what it says here. And the ark rested on the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon Mount Ararat. Where was Mount Ararat? As in some studying, we find out. We will back up in a few minutes and talk about that. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. Wow! Listen to that. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro, and the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him, to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the earth. But the dove found no rest for her soul of her feet, and she returned unto him unto the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. And then he put forth his hand, and pulled her in unto him unto the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days. And again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf, plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. Wow. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, that the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering off the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. Now we're going to look at the end of the second dispensation of conscience. Genesis chapter 4 and 1 through 8 told us about that. Let's go back and take a quick look at that right here. Genesis 4, 1 through 8. Let's go back and take a look at that. It said, and Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I now have gotten a man from God, from the Lord. And she again bare Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And the processes of time it came to pass that Cain brought fruit of the ground and offered it to the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstling of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, do thy well to be wroth? And why art this countenance fallen? If thou dost well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou dost not well, sin lieth at thy door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And Cain talked with Abel, his brother. And it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up and slew Abel, his brother. The devil was present on the earth then, and he started out with a murder. And one brother murders another. Wow. This is a dreadful thing to happen. Now let's look back over here. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth a dove out of the ark. And the dove came in unto him in the evening, and lo, in his mouth was an olive leaf plucked off, and Noah knew that the waters abated from the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. Whenever you're reading about sevens in the Bible, look at it good. Think about it. As you're reading about 7 things that happened, 7 things that happened, and he sent 7 more days. If you're praying and you pray and you don't have an answer, and you say, Lord, I really need this answer by Friday, and Friday comes and you don't have the answer, rather than to get frantic, pray again. Say, Lord, let's do this again and see what would happen in 7 more days. And have faith, and God will answer. He will show you whether it is supposed to come to pass or not. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month of the first day of the month, that the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the cover off the ark, and look, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. Now, see, that was the 2nd month of the 7th and 20th day. So we see that there was a reason for 7 more days. We see the reason for that. The earth was dried. Now, the second dispensation, we saw the first one, which started when Cain killed Abel. That's when that first one started. That was the wicked thing that started. And now we see in verse 14, chapter 8, and verse 14 here, and the 2nd month on the 7th day and the 20th day of the month was the earth dried. We got a new thing coming in here now. The present age, the flood, after the flood, we're going to be here now until the millennium, the 1,000-year reign. So the earth is going to be used this time between the flood and the 1,000-year millennial reign. Let's take a look at that. Genesis 8 and 15 tells us, And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth out of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons, and the sons and your sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, and of all flesh, no cat, and both of fowls and of cattle and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth. By the way, that when God spoke about the breeding here in this verse, was only mentioned only one other time in the scripture, and that was back in Genesis 1 and 22. And fulfill and multiply the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatever creepeth upon the earth, after their kind, went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar. This is the most important verse right here. that you'll find with Noah coming out of the ark. Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast. You remember? He took 7 of all the clean, so that he could take that first one and sacrifice of each animal. He sacrificed the clean one of each clean animal. The first one that he had in the ark, he took 7. That left 6 to breed. And then that would have, those clean animals would be on the earth. And every time God required an animal sacrifice, which he did, all the way up to just before the New Testament, there would be plenty of clean animals on the earth. The life is in the blood. Now, you and I may not understand what a clean animal is, but what a clean animal was is an animal that had blood that God would accept. He would not accept with just any animal's blood. And then when he did get something, sometimes God would say, I want the firstling, the first one that's born from that new mother. When she has her firstling, I want that first one sacrificed to me. God knew what he was doing, knows what he's doing, and he is going to be until the end of the earth, or until the millennial reign. We're going to see this. Now, what's going to happen in the millennial reign, I know not, and nobody else knows either. Bring forth thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth on the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. This was one of God's systems for this earth to work. It works because of the way the animals live and do. What they fertilize, what they dig up, the things that the foliage that they eat, so the earth won't just be run over. And by the way, I used to talk a good bit back a few years ago when I was in the Old Testament about before the flood. Before the flood, I believe there were dinosaurs. Before the flood, I believe there were huge animals that ate much vegetation. And they cleaned up the vegetation. But after the flood, I believe God sent enough clean animals over so that we didn't need dinosaurs anymore for the big lawnmowers, and we could use the smaller animals. We don't see the dinosaurs on this side of the flood. We saw them on the other side of the flood. So, that may be 100% true, and it may not be. You study that out and then cipher it for yourself. I've studied it and ciphered it for myself there. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. This is verse 21. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time, harvest time, cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Well, as I read verse 22, I see that the North Pole and the South Pole are cold, frozen places. And then he says that summertime and wintertime will remain. I see that case in between the North and South Pole, where most of us live in places where it is wintertime and summertime. And even though some places have very, very mild winters, it's still winter. And some, because the fall came by and the leaves fell off the trees and everything. So let's see. We see the word clean beast. Those are the ones God was interested in having sacrificed. You could not sacrifice just any beast. Now we see a fact that the first thing Noah did was build an altar. That was one of the most important things that God required. Moses' law in Exodus 20, when we go over there, and 24 and 26, when we get to it, and Deuteronomy 27, 5, and Joshua 8 and 30 and 31, the altar was used to bring communion back to God. That's where the people had fell. The people had fallen away from God. They had disobeyed. They had done things wrong, and God brought them back. Now we see that over here, before the Noahic covenant here, that the earth was turned inside out. When the flood came, the earth was turned inside out. Now, the flood, and I've mentioned this in chapter 7, had boiled the earth inside out. And all of the things that were on the earth went into the center of the earth, went into the earth. And as they went into the earth, deeper and deeper, not as far as hell, where they would be burned up, but to be close enough to hell so that it cooked. And all of these things cooked into big oil pots. So we have oil pots in the heart of the earth and in all around the earth, and they come from the vegetation and the peoples that were on the earth. As I said back in 7, I repeat it because you may not have seen 7. This earth was completely covered all the way around with people and animals. When the flood came, this earth was 100% all the way around covered with people and animals. And that was the case on this earth. So when they all were put inside of the earth, that's the oil we're burning today. The animals and the people. This earth was completely covered with animals, birds, and people, and vegetation. And it all was turned under. So when Noah got off the ark, he had to start all over again. Now he had enough animals on the ark, so when he sacrificed those first animals, and then sacrificed daily and weekly as he went on, he had enough food to eat for his people until they got gardens planted, until things started growing again, and then they had vegetation again, and whatever. You say, well, I can see a little situation here that's a little problem. Where did Noah get the food for the animals? Well, the meat eaters could eat some of the meat also, but those that weren't meat eaters were vegetation. When Noah took the food on the ark, nobody has said this to me or whatever, but reasoning as we go through and look at it, there is a possibility, this is a probability that is possible, that God put everybody to sleep on the ark for 1 year. And the food they took on was really for when they got off the ark, not while they were on the ark. There would be a possibility of that. Why would you say that, Brother Peter? Because there would be a reasoning in that if they were eating on the ark, there was no way to get rid of the waste that comes from animals and people. They might have filled the ark with waste. What did Noah do with the waste? Well, he didn't do anything with it. He didn't have the waste to do anything with it if they were in suspended animation, if they were hibernating. If they were hibernating. So, and that's the thing. So, we don't know. Many things we do not know. But also, we have to be careful how we hypothesis in the Bible. Hypothesis is not fact. And it's not fact that I'm talking here if I talk about that happening. That's not fact. And so we have to be careful how we talk with not fact. But we do know that we're going to be here right now until the millennial reign. That's the 1,000-year reign. We do know that God's going to use this earth until the 1,000-year millennial reign. When is that? I don't know when that is. The Bible said when the last person on this earth accepts Jesus Christ, and he knows the number, we don't, then that's going to happen. That it's going to change. The earth is going to change. And so there are, in chapter 8, there are 10 prophecies in chapter 8 that were fulfilled and are being fulfilled. Now, when we get over into chapter 9, we're going to see the next prophecy being fulfilled in chapter 9. And you can't step up on my computer, cat. No, you got to get that. My cat loves to get up here with me. But if she steps on my computer, I got a mess. God totally destroyed the pre-Adamic animals and vegetables and people. We see in chapter 8, they were completely destroyed. 100% destroyed. Nothing was left. And it was a new beginning. And when Noah got off, they had a new life. And again, God said he never would destroy the earth by water again. Because he said that in 9 and 15. We hadn't been there yet. But we're fixing to go there in a few minutes and see that. So, we see the most important thing in a man's life after he is saved. And Noah was saved by the flood. That he worshiped God. That he built an altar and sacrificed to God. And that's the thing we need to do. We need to sacrifice to God everything that we have in our life when we get saved. And say, it's all behind me now. Do you know November 5th, 1972, 3 o'clock in the morning, God saved me. And I never took another drink from that day to this. Never swore another cuss word from that day to this. I tried keeping the cigarettes for a while. And God showed me one day, hey, I delivered you from them nasty things the same time I delivered you from them other heathen things. All you had to do is accept it. I said, well, thank you, God. And I threw it down and I never lit another one. And that's the way it is supposed to be. When we have we become a new creation. And as we become a new creation, we're supposed to put down lying, cheating, stealing, all of those things, the drinking, cussing, swearing, rattling, everything. You put all of that down and you start new, just like Noah did after the flood. Everything was gone and we started brand new. Well, this is Brother Peter saying, we'll see you next time. Remember now, this was chapter 8 of the book of Genesis. And we're going to go to chapter 9 next. Bye-bye.